Today we have two special guests. We've got Ben from Salesforce and Paul is here from Adapt IQ. And they're going to be talking about CRM best practices. They are industry experts. So we're going to get some really good information about how we can work with these databases. CRM is, of course, customer relationship management. And that's a really important aspect of owning a business. So before we get started, just a little bit of housekeeping. We are streaming out on multiple platforms and we'd love for you to ask questions. And you can do that by using the comment section, the chat function, or the Q&A function, depending on what platform you're streaming with us on. Feel free to drop your questions in throughout the session, and Ben and Paul are going to be answering them towards the end of the session. We love making these sessions work for your business, so don't be scared. Pop your questions in. There is no silly question. Really, make it work for you. Now, if you're streaming on Zoom, you will receive a link to this session in a thank you for attending email. But just remember, folks, if you're registered to digitalboost.co.nz, you can have a look at all the sessions that we've run to date since the middle of January this year. Well, it seems like a lifetime ago. By logging into Digital Boost, scroll down, and in the in case you missed it section, there's a view more button, and it should take you to an archive of all the sessions that we've run to date, including another session by Ben. It was really fantastic. And I believe we talked about retail. Welcome, Ben. Welcome, Paul.
Kia ora. Thank you for having me again. This is my third session with Digital Boost, and it's always a bit of fun.
Yeah, like I was having a look yesterday and I realized that I probably had, I think we're at the 280, 290 mark of these sessions that we've run this year. So I thought we did one on retail experience. That's the one that sticks out in my head. It was really fantastic information on making sure that you're being aware of who your customer is and interacting with them appropriately so that you retain them. And it really stuck, like the way you explained it and the way you got into that session was really fantastic. In fact, once I jump off into the back, I'm going to pull links to your previous sessions and I'll pop them in the chat for everyone else to check those out.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for having us today. So I'm going to lead the session and talk a little bit around some of the amazing trends that we're seeing across SMBs. And I've also got my friend here, Paul Butterworth, who is the New Zealand practice lead for Adapt IQ. And halfway through, I'm actually going to hand over to Paul. And I'm very good at talking about the what and the why, but I'm no good at talking about the how. And our partners like Adapt IQ, and especially Paul, are very good at talking about, as a small business, how do you actually leverage technology to really survive and thrive throughout what's going on in the world right now. So to introduce myself, I love talking about myself. I'm in sales, so it's one of those traits that we roll with. I'm the Regional Sales Director for Salesforce's growth business here in New Zealand. I'm fortunate enough to lead a team of 10 people across my part of the organization, and we've got about 130 of us here on the ground in New Zealand. I'm fortunate enough to, as soon as I left school, enter my way into small business, and typically have been through the IT industry, through distribution, through reseller, all through that as well, and have seen it all. Worked in everything across 80 to 150 person organizations that were going through the challenges of being that size. And also, before joining Salesforce about 5 or 6 years ago, worked in a really nimble, high growth IT startup as well, which was a heck of a lot of fun and taught me a lot about the challenges that small business owners go through every day. So we're going to talk a little bit around some of the trends that we've seen over the last wee while. And then, of course, hand over to Paul to talk about how can you, as a small business owner or small business leader, execute on those trends. Now, if you've ever seen me present before, this is Salesforce's forward-looking statement. We're a publicly listed company, so our boffins up on Wall Street have to tell us to present this every single time that we present. Please make any purchasing decisions based on currently available product out there. We're not going to talk too much about product today, but we're going to talk about the mindset you need to be in to execute on a really good technology project to help you better connect with your customers and to help you transform your processes and the way you're doing business today. So, bit of an agenda. We're going to start with a high level, what kind of world are SMBs operating in and how are they doing? So I'm going to reference one of our latest reports that we've just released, our 5th annual SMB Trends Report across Australia and New Zealand, with a specific focus on Kiwi businesses today. And then I'm going to hand over to Paul at Adapt IQ to talk through how to keep up with these trends and actually implement that amazing technology. But before we do that, let's take a bit of a step back. SMBs are incredibly important to Salesforce's business. And here alone, I'm privileged enough to lead that ecosystem of account executives, partners, and consultants and resellers who are all focused on helping SMBs stay ahead. And we're fortunate enough to deal with over 900 of those customers in New Zealand today, and we're really excited at some of the cool things that they are doing with our technology to put their customer at the front and center of everything they do. And because SMBs are so important, every year we take a good deep dive and we release our view of what's happening out in the market. So let's dive a little bit deeper into that process. And this is actually our 5th local report on SMBs, our small medium business trends report. And when we talk about SMBs at Salesforce, we're typically talking about organizations that are somewhere between sort of 15 and 100 employees, right? But a lot of the trends that we're sort of seeing in this report are applicable to all size businesses. Perhaps not so much the top end of town, but definitely those 97% of Kiwi organizations that help keep food on the table. And what these reports are all about is helping our customers understand what's going on outside of their sphere of control. So perhaps what other organizations are up to. And to get this data, this past June and July, we ran a survey with the Harris poll of over 800 SMB leaders across New Zealand, and those running businesses that with less than 50 employees. Our goals of this research are a couple of fold. The first is just to take a pulse and to see how SMBs are doing. We've been through such incredible challenges over the last 18 months or so. Anna Marie and I were just talking about some of our travel challenges over the last 6 months or so. So it's been a crazy world out there. And then also to see how these SMB owners and leaders are running their business, what's working and what's not. And it turns out, no surprises, that a lot is changing, which we're going to sort of get into. So sit back, take it all in. Please use the Q&A box on Zoom and on YouTube, and we're happy to answer any questions as we go through and as we get closer to the end. And I'll provide a link to this report a little bit further on throughout the presentation as well. So where are we today? Throughout the challenges, the challenges of COVID sort of vary by location and by industry, it's fair to say that for most, there has been a lot of changing and a lot to overcome. And for SMBs that typically don't have that resource of larger businesses, adapting quickly has been really crucial. And honestly, it's been amazing. It's been really incredible to watch. And one of the most incredible things that we sort of keep an eye on is the amount of new businesses that are starting. And in the midst of the madness of the last 18 months, SMBs are launching and growing. I know I'm seeing it across my business, and when I talk to business leaders every day, they are really putting the pedal to the metal and driving their organizations forward. And one of the cool things that we saw over the last 18 months is that there was a whopping 40,000 new businesses started in New Zealand. And this is according to a recent study by our friends over at Xero. And I'll read you a bit of an excerpt from the media release that they released as part of this research as well. But those 40,000 startups that we sort of saw in the last 18 months are a lot more than we've normally seen. And people have come home from offshore, experienced and talented people who are not just young people returning home from their OEs and trying to find jobs, but we're seeing this incredible influx of entrepreneurial people who realize that this is an opportune time to start a business because the old rules don't apply. What used to be true is no longer true, and there are real opportunities for people and business who embrace technology and fold it into their operations. So it's actually really, really exciting times ahead. And that progress isn't stopping. We're continuing to see record numbers of new businesses starting. We're continuing to see, despite the challenges of level 3 and level 2 lockdown across the country, SMBs continue to push really hard and really, really push on their growth numbers as well. So how are they actually doing that? And what it really starts with is a really clear, all digital, all the time approach. And this has been completely necessary for businesses to continue operating over the last 18 months. And it's been incredible, the conversations we've had. We've had discussions with everyone from the local butcher through to your insurance broker, through to anyone else across so many different industries that have had to move to this cloud-first world. And in some cases, it's been completely overnight. And this digitization shift has been the biggest change over the last couple of years. And what we really found throughout our research is that small businesses that are embracing this all digital, all the time approach are the ones that are surviving and thriving. And there were 4 sort of major themes that came out of this research as well. And this is how SMBs are starting to find success in the digital world. Number one, first and foremost, is that SMB owners and SMB leaders are having to prioritize and are doing a really good job of prioritizing their customer and their employee engagements as they settle into the new world. Making sure their customers feel like they're valued and becoming trusted advisors to those customers, but ensuring that employees are looked after and that they're not just productive, but they feel like they're contributing and they feel like they are being looked after by the company that they work for. Number 2, and this is what I'm going to touch on today a little bit more, is how SMBs are embracing that digital first world. And as I sort of said earlier, the ones that are doing this and doing it really well and putting it at the forefront of their business strategy are the ones that are really surviving and thriving. Number 3 is that they are having an increased focus on security. With a large distributed workforce that aren't necessarily working in the office, and most of us aren't right now, myself included, is keeping in mind that secure platforms for your business is something which is tremendously important right now, because we can't have data leaking out the sides. We need to make sure that we are focusing on a really secure environment for our staff and for our customers. And then finally, we're seeing SMBs really embracing that new reality. They're preparing for that new future, and where they sort of foresee long-term change, long-term challenge, they're really sort of doubling down and focusing on that. Now, I could talk all day about this, but I want to be very, very conscious of time, and I want to talk about the what and the why, and hand over to Paul to talk about the how. So, as I mentioned earlier, I will just focus today on how we embrace that digital first world and sort of that pace of digitization that SMBs are continuing to run at as well. Now, as we know, the pandemic threw everybody into a tailspin and no one was really ready. And small businesses, which have those fewer resources and tend to be more dependent on local economies, truly felt the pain. And it forced many of them to digitize, and they had to make sure that their employees could work remotely or sell online. They had to be able to communicate, collaborate, and drive sales from anywhere. So you might not be surprised to hear that 71% of growing businesses say they survived throughout the last 18 months through digitization. And that's absolutely huge, through shifting their business model away from perhaps bricks and mortar to an online presence. 71% of them survived because of that. It's absolutely huge. And that pace of acceleration continues to increase. Last year, about a third of growing SMBs had accelerated their investments into technology. And this year, that number's out to about 42%. So organizations are continuing to invest in technology to ready themselves for what's coming next. And where's that investment going? Our research found that the majority of SMBs, 83% of them, have at least some of their operations online, and nearly all, 95%, moved a portion online in the last year. So further to this as well, nearly 3/4 of SMBs have increased their online presence and on spend on social media or websites and ads and more over the past year. And having a look at where they're actually accelerating that investment, it's no surprise that they are listening more to their customers. Customer service technology investments have been the number one investment area, followed by sales, of course. And this is in a time where finding business is really challenging for many. So it makes sense that as the pandemic went on and investments in technology accelerated, of course, its usage increased as well. And we talked earlier about how SMBs are focusing on customer relationships in this all digital world. And notably, SMBs particularly rely on technology that supports this, such as a customer relationship management system. And no surprises, with a big old Salesforce logo sitting on my chest right here, that's what we do at Salesforce. And for those of you that are unfamiliar with what CRM is, Anna Marie noted earlier, I've run a What is a CRM session earlier on Digital Boost, and it's something I'd really encourage you to check out. It's something that my company, Salesforce, who I work for, creates and is the market leader in as well. And what it's all about is helping you manage your communications and your interactions with your customers so that you can find new customers, sell to them more efficiently and more effectively, and offer really stellar customer service. Given all that's happened over the past 18 months ago, it's no surprise that nearly 2/3 of growing SMBs are investing into CRM platforms for their business as well. So it's something which is really important and really front of mind. Now, you might be thinking, a CRM is just going to help me log my activity. What good is that, right? And I encourage you to think wider than this, because a good CRM platform, like we talk to customers about all day, every day, is one that centralizes every interaction you have with your customers, whether it's from marketing, whether it's your customer service team, whether it's your salespeople. It's all about having that single view of the customer. It should allow you to build process around your interactions with them. So if an account's overdue, let's notify the account manager proactively so they can reach out and have a really good conversation about how to resolve that issue. And it should also allow you to measure and make changes as your business evolves. We've seen over everything in the last 18 months, that what the last 18 months has thrown at us, that ability to pivot and make change really, really quickly is something which is tremendously important. So that's what we do at Salesforce. And I love working with our 900 plus customers here in New Zealand to help them evolve their business to the next stage. And if you'd like a copy and like to understand a little bit more about some of the trends that are happening across Australia and New Zealand, just pop on to salesforce.com/SMB Trends to download the report. Now, I've talked a lot about the what and the why, and this is something that I'm really passionate about, but truth be told, I'm no good at the how. And I'm really lucky to have a good friend of mine, Paul Butterworth, here today, who works and leads our practice for one of our partners, AdaptIQ, who are very good at taking the what challenges are you facing today and helping evolve that into technology that's really going to help you accelerate your business. So Paul, with that, I'm going to switch my video off and I'm going to hand over to you. I'm going to do my best to stay on top of the slides for you. So hopefully we can make this work out.
Thank you very much, Ben. And it's a pleasure to be here today. My name is Paul Butterworth and I'm the practice lead for AdaptIQ. Just as a brief intro before we get into the how, AdaptIQ is a UK and New Zealand combined company. We've got 8 onshore staff, we've got 25 in the UK. We have some ability to offshore some of our work into India as well with another 45 developers. We are a very SMB oriented and focused Salesforce partner, and we probably work our way through 3 to 4 Salesforce implementations per month into the SMB space. Ben's done a really good job of painting the benefits and value of digitization. And when you're considering digitization, CRM is probably the, I guess we call it the cornerstone or the foundation stone of how to build out your digital business. So AdaptIQ is a Salesforce partner that specializes in initially sales and service implementations. If you want to move on, Ben, to the next slide. So looking at what we're going to tell you today, we're going to start by reinforcing some of the stuff that Ben has talked about. So I'm going to start by talking about, and often for a small business, it's hard to understand what